Despite it only coming out 5 years ago, I've never really heard any consensus on this movie, so I didn't really know what to expect coming into it, especially because it's a prequel to the other films, with the majority of it set in 1987. This is a very different kind of story compared to the other 5 Transformers movies, and honestly, I enjoyed this much more than many of those. Its shorter runtime lends to its focused, character-driven story that serves out in a fun take on the boy and dog mold, whereas the other movies have all been about this grand battle between Autobots and Decepticons, naturally leading to a large fight sequence, and very little time to invest in the characters. This movie was the complete opposite, spending most of its time focusing on Charlie, played amazingly by Haley Steinfeld, as she learns through her relationship with Bumblebee to open up again following the death of her father. Her warm and endearing performance makes this a very heartwarming story, and gives this franchise its strongest and most relatable lead yet. Although the lack of spectacle that became the main selling point for the movie's predecessors may be a disappointment for some audiences, the sparse action felt creative and easy to follow, always included with a set purpose in mind, rather than to waste minutes away and get from one story point to another. Okay, so that was my attempt at a concise, more professional review, since that is technically what I want to be practicing with some of these movie reviews. But now I'll just spew some of my thoughts. This was so much better than I expected coming into it. Haley Steinfeld really gives an outstanding performance as her character bonds with Bumblebee, and as she overcomes the grief and reclusiveness caused by her father's death some time ago. I mentioned in previous reviews for this franchise how I was never really able to care for some of the characters, and really only cared about some of the Autobots and how cinematic and grand the action sequences were. But in a much shorter time frame, this movie gave me a character that I cared about so much. We're really brought into her life and her struggles, and we get to see how she gradually overcomes these throughout the movie thanks to her new car, Bumblebee. I love the small details and bits of story we get as she grows, like learning more about her father's death, how he passed on his love of cars to her, and the symbolism that both the Camaro in the garage and her willing to dive again. There was just something about her and how human she is made to feel that really made her a relatable character, because conflicts like family, loss, and how we deal with all of this. Not everyone may have lost a parent at a young age, but almost everyone can still feel some of these emotions and have these problems, whether it be your family driving you crazy and wanting to get away, not fitting in with everyone else, just wanting that one person who can understand you and listen. These are all relatable concepts that I believe hit home for many people, me for sure. Even though I wasn't deeply into the story at times, I loved how this movie was driven by its characters and not by action. The story is crafted so much better than previous installments, which actually does give me hope for the new film, given that it isn't Michael Bay behind the director's seat once again. He's a great filmmaker when it comes to cinematography and action, but sometimes that isn't enough to make a good film. To go more in depth in the movie, I did like how it connected back to the present day, so to speak, at times, like the inclusion of Sector 7, and then of course showing how Bumblebee loses his ability to speak, and how he gets his name. I'm actually glad that happened because I don't think I could have listened to that voice for the entire movie. Something about it just didn't fit for me. I wasn't as big on the Transformers side of the story as I was with past installments. Maybe it was just the lesser time spent there, but I thought the idea of hunting for Autobots was good, but the execution just wasn't there. It was cool seeing the war on Cybertron to kick off the movie. The visual effects did look great throughout, but there was also just something about the Transformers designs that looked off for me, almost as if it was blockier and just more basic, like they looked more like toys in this one. But this wasn't that big of a deal since we really only saw 3 different Transformers for most of the movie. I'll admit I was concerned when I realized that John Cena was playing the human antagonist for the movie, but I thought that his character was actually pretty controlled, although he was pretty much just a basic bad guy. We never spent much time with the government or Decepticons to really get to know them or have a solid opinion on them. The main takeaway from that side of the story was really just how desperate the US was to beat out the Russians, and the idea of how advancements in technology and status factor into really bad decisions sometimes. Only other things that I think I want to mention is that some of the 80s references were nice, a little over the top at times but still nice. I loved the soundtrack, and this probably had the most consistent score of all the movies. It didn't have that one grand piece, and maybe it was just how many emotional moments were attempted, but the music really stood out to me here. Comment down below what you think of Bumblebee, and what movie reviews you'd like to see in the future. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for more movie content, and follow me on my various platforms listed in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow.